Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Please go to the Henry Gornbein YouTube channel to see all of my shows of Gracefully Graying and tell all your friends about us as we continue to grow. We live in Bloomfield Township, which is an affluent community. We are used to having wonderful goods and services, our snow removal, a top fire department, police department, and these are not free services. Today on Gracefully Graying, I'm pleased to welcome as my guest Leo Savoie, the Township Supervisor. Leo, welcome to Gracefully Graying.
It's great to be here. Great to spend some time with you, Henry.
Likewise. So why don't you tell us about the millage and what's going on? First of all, why didn't it pass last time?
Well, I think you're confusing two different things.
Okay.
The previous one was the Special Assessment District,
Okay.
and this upcoming millage is a millage renewal.
Okay.
And it's being held at the presidential primary, March 10th, and it's a renewal of an existing millage that is already out there that was passed 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, it was 2009, 2010, and we're just in the heart of the deep recession that we both remember. And back then, there was such a demise and such a decline of state equalized valuations of the property that in order just to maintain the services, we needed to pass it, and the community, in fact, did pass it. And it didn't even maintain the services. There were millions of dollars of cuts back then. Well, that millage is now renewing, and we're now ending, and we're looking for a renewal of it so we can keep those services in place.
And tell us about the services that are impacted by this.
100% of this particular millage goes to police and fire. It's about $5.1 million. Police and fire encompass just over 2/3 of our entire budget here. It's about $30 million, $32 million, I think, to be exact, out of a $40 million budget. So the objective of local government is to protect the residents, and we just do an outstanding job with that. And we had the Special Assessment District that didn't pass in August, and we cut about $4 million out of the budget then. We did it in terms of personnel. We did cut about $2 million there. Insurance changes, $1.1 million, $350,000 in program cuts, $650,000 out of the road department. And we were able to do that to meet our obligations under the changes of the state law. But this renewal is something different. If this doesn't pass, the only place to make any additional cuts anymore is really personnel. And we'd be looking at 40 fewer police officers and firefighters, about 20 from each department.
So Leo, to clarify, this millage is really to maintain the status quo, in effect.
Just maintain the services. We heard the residents in the last year's election. We made the cuts out there, but you're absolutely right. This is just a status quo to keep the same services available.
Is there opposition to it?
There is, and it's the same group that opposed the SAD. Back then they called themselves the No SAD group, and today they call themselves the Better Bloomfield group. Some of them call themselves Cut Spending in Bloomfield. They are out there opposed to it. They have signs out there opposing it. I know that two of them from the opposition sat down with our police chief and fire chief and discussed ways to cut their budgets internally, and some of their ideas was all of our police officers are required to have college degrees. That goes all the way back to the 1970s. We were one of the few departments out there that required that, and we're still one of the few departments. It's gotten more 50-50 or so. And they said, well, just hire high school kids and bring them on. You won't have to pay them as much. Likewise, on our fire department, just to apply, you have to be a paramedic. And they said, well, just bring them on as advanced first aid, Red Cross advanced first aid, or bring them on as EMTs, and you won't have to pay them as much. But that just diminishes the quality of the individuals that we have, both on the police side and the fire side.
That's crazy. Are these people rational, for lack of a better word?
You're an attorney. I'll let you. And I don't agree with them. I haven't agreed with them, and but that's their position, among other things out there. Their attack on the personnel that here at Bloomfield Township has really been unbelievable to me, and has been so vitriolic. They fail to realize that as a community, all we are is a service provider. And as a service provider, the service comes from our employees. And if you want the lowest paid employees out there, we can do that. But all you're going to do is get a transition. They're going to leave here and go someplace else. And we've lost a number of employees over the last couple of years to other municipalities. Now, if they were going to the private sector, I could understand that. But you have to ask yourself, with 3.8% unemployment, is your objective to cut the benefits of the employees and cut the salaries of the employees? And I would say no.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, first of all, public safety is critical. I mean,
paramount.
You need the fire department, you need the paramedics, you need the police. And we're not talking about a community that cannot afford it. This is an affluent community. It's one of the most affluent communities in one of the most affluent counties in the United States.
We were just ranked 14th in the country, best place to live. And they review, they analyze, and they quantify all the services and everything that the community has to offer its residents. And when you think about the 14th best in the United States, that is really something that all of us, both as employees and as residents, should be proud of, that we live here. And it's not a matter that we're affluent. It's a matter of, do we spend the money responsibly, and do we provide the services a quality service? And I would say yes. Unfortunately, I've had to use our EMS services several times over the last 5 or 6 years. As we get older, it's more and more
things happen.
And important, yeah.
Right.
The ticker the heart doesn't quite work as well, or we fall and do things like that. And the number of letters that I get from the residents regarding our police service and our fire services, I get a couple a week, and I have a stack this high that I keep on the corner of my desk there, from the people that are just so appreciative of what we do. In fact, the fire chief called me, and somebody just, they were transported, and he wrote a check for $10,000 and donated it to the fire department. And he was going to return it. I said, no, don't return it. I called the individual, and he said, no, everything that you guys do out there, it's like, I want to contribute, and you guys use it to buy whatever equipment that you need, and that's in fact what we will do.
Well, Lee, as you're saying, this is not fluff. These are life and death services. These are services where the response time and the ability to have enough vehicles and personnel is critical as far as fire and emergency services. And then with the police, crime is an issue. It's an issue everywhere, and we need to be fully staffed with well-trained officers.
You have to ask yourself why you can go 5 miles north of Bloomfield Township or 5 miles south of Bloomfield Township, and the crime situation is completely different than what it is here in the township. The criminals, the bad guys out there, they know that we will go and we will find them and we will investigate it. And you're absolutely right, this is not fluff. And in fact, when this was passed to go on the presidential primary ballot, this renewal was passed unanimously by our entire board. Now, the previous SAD, it was contentious. Several of our board members voted no on this, but this renewal, as you say, is not fluff, and I think everybody gets it and understands it from the board standpoint, and most people from the public understand it. If this didn't pass, if this renewal were to fail, it would be life-changing for all of the residents here in the community.
Tell us how. I think that's important that people know that, you know, it's not fluff, it's critical, it has to pass, and if it fails, what does it mean?
I don't want to be I don't want to be accused of scare tactics, but it's really what
reality.
It is.
It's not scare. It's, you know.
In reality, when I first came in as supervisor in 2011, one of the things that I said is really key is aging in place in our community. So everything we can do as a community, we're an older community, to keep people in their homes for the longest period of time. And part of it is our senior center, part of it is our police, and part of it is our fire. And if we have 20 fewer police officers out there, we're going to have basically our investigative units will be decimated. Our patrols will go down from 6 per shift down to 4 per shift. I met with the fire chief and said, you got to cut $2.5 million out of your budget. And just last week, and he looked at me and said, if we cut $2.5 million, you might as well make it $3.5 million, because we bring in about $1 million of revenue for our EMS transport services. And if I have to cut $2.5 million out of the budget, I can't run EMS. So now we're going to have to bring in a private provider, whether it's Star, Advance, one of the other ones there. But we will no longer run the EMS, and we will show up on scene, wait for them to show up once we assess the situation, and take it from there. That is key. Those both on the police side and the fire side are key life and death situations.
Well, don't the people in opposition get it? I mean, it's not as if we're trying to raise tax. You're just trying to maintain status quo.
I don't know what they get. I don't know the reason why they're doing what they're doing. They feel that the salaries that the employees get paid are extravagant. They feel that the retirement benefits that they receive are extravagant. They feel that the health care that they receive is extravagant. Our average retiree makes $46,000 a year on their pension for 25 to 30 years of service. They feel that people shouldn't be able to retire when they're 50 or 52, firefighters and police officers. Well, those were mandated by binding arbitration through Public Act 312. As an attorney, you're aware of that.
Yes.
Likewise, we contribute 14% into the defined contribution plan for police and fire, and they call that extravagant when they compare it to the private sector. Well, when you compare it to the government sector, we're not the highest out there, and we're not the lowest out there. Police and fire in Birmingham contributed 15%. But again, that was mandated by Public Act 312, binding arbitration, and there's nothing we can do on that. And so they turned around and said, well, then go after the general employees, and the general employees, you can cut their benefits. Well, again, we go back to a service industry, and if you want people as a stepping stone to get a job here and go on to another municipality, well, try and cut their pay and try and cut their benefits, and don't acknowledge or don't realize that we have 3.8% unemployment, that over the next 7 years they say that 1/3 of the government employees are going to be retiring from their jobs, and less than 2% of the college students out there say that working for a government, whether it's local, county, state, or federal, is only 2% of them would consider that a career.
You have to be competitive. You can't cut. If anything, we should be increasing benefits and wages, but
again, it's all about maintaining,
right?
And it's about 80% of it is making it a quality place to work, because you don't have to pay them the most amount of money if they like coming to their jobs every single day. And if they like coming to their jobs, it's going to be reflective of how they interact with our residents.
How many fire stations are there in the township?
There's 4. We have one on the east side, northeast side up on Westview. We have one centrally on the north side up on Franklin. We have our central firehouse here, and we have on the southern end over on Maple Road by Telegraph, we have one there. And we have about 60 firefighters, and there's certain things that must be done under state law that if 2 firefighters go into a fire, there has to be 2 outside prepared to go in to get them. So it's not like you can continue to cut back and cut back. You have to maintain a certain personnel level just in order to operate.
And this is true with the police as well. There's just one police station, isn't there?
There's only one police, but
yes.
They roll in 4 different quadrants, actually 3 different quadrants on the east side, the north side, and the south side, and then central. So at any given time, there's 5 to 8 police officers on the road, plus command, plus our entire dispatch of 12 to 13 people. We've looked at outsourcing our dispatch with the county. A lot of communities do that. The problem is as soon as you do that, those dispatchers at the county, they don't know the community. They don't know the roads. They don't know the neighborhoods, and they don't know the individuals that are calling. There's some people that call all the time that dispatchers get to get familiar with and things like that. We want that intimacy. We want that knowledge. And if you went to the county, you lose all of that. Likewise, on the police side, we have an individual in the violent gang task force, the narcotic enforcement team, the surveillance team, and the FBI financial fraud team. You know that, especially with our seniors, one of the largest crimes that we have here in Bloomfield Township is financial fraud. And how many emails do you get? Click here. I just heard one this morning on my briefing that a business looks like they're out $400,000 because of financial fraud. Narcotic enforcement team, that's one of the few times we can be proactive against crime rather than reactive, and we are proactive against crime.
You need personnel to do that.
Exactly, and if we have to make those cuts, all of these people are going to come back off out of these different task force there, and then suddenly nobody realizes the amount of investigative work they do for our detectives. This last round, when the SAD didn't pass, we closed down our traffic enforcement. We had a specific traffic enforcement, brought them back into the patrols. Now they will still patrol the streets there, but there were 3 or 4 officers that did nothing but traffic, and we get a lot of complaints from residents who are speeding through my neighborhood. Suddenly that goes away.
How do you get the word out so that people know how important this is, that it's not as if we're raising taxes, we're just maintaining the status, we're continuing and renewing what is critical?
We're a smart community, and there are a lot of smart residents out there, and I hope they get it, and I hope they don't believe the no people. The no people are saying this is a new tax. It's not a new tax. The no people are saying that we can do without this money. We can get by without this money, but I guarantee you the community will not like how the public safety looks. Everything will be, we'll have 2 less firehouses out there. It is that simple. We have a smart community, and I think the community gets it. And
I got a letter from the township that certain roads, and I live on a private road, that these would no longer be cleaned with regard to snow, with regard to patching, and these are important issues for those of us who live here.
Okay. All the private roads that we had handled in the past were grandfathered in back in the 1970s that we were going to take care of them. And we had talked about eliminating those services over the years and said, you know, we really don't need to. Well, with cutting $650,000 out of the road department, we needed to, and it is unfortunate. Fortunately, we're not going to implement that until April 1st, so we get through this winter. So the neighborhood associations that need to plow their own streets and maintain their own streets will have the ability to find somebody to do that. But people don't realize that running a government takes money, and if you take away those resources, if you have to cut back, something has to give. Now, we closed down the animal shelter, and fortunately, I think we're going to be able to bring that back. We're going to work in conjunction with at least one, if not two other communities out there, and reopen our animal shelter here on the township campus. And it's my hope we're actually able to cut more out of the budget, and it's my hope that we can bring back shredding and household hazardous waste and electronic waste disposals in the springtime. But it's all about services, and this is paramount to the quality service for what we have here in the community.
And it's not as if there's a lot of fat.
No.
This is critical. This is flesh and bone, so to speak.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if the no people, if they're jealous, if they're envious. I know some of them worked in corporate America and they get their pensions. I know that they've had to change things in health care, and they say that the township employees only pay a couple of $100s a year for their health care. Well, they don't take into consideration the deductibles that are out there, but more importantly, they don't take care of, or they don't take into consideration the fact that we look at it as a big picture, and we look at it as utilization of the healthcare services out there, because we're basically self-employed. And when we made the changes back in 2010, our healthcare costs were about $8 million. Today it's about $9.5 million. And if you looked at the national average on healthcare, we should be somewhere between 14 and 15. Healthcare costs have gone up 78%. We put a wellness program out there that our employees and our retirees have bought into, and like I said, if you think wellness is too expensive to pay for, try paying for illness. And we've looked at utilization rather than penalizing.
The old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There's a lot of truth to that. It
is unbelievable. And so when checkups are free, when the flu shots are free, when we can do that, and they're not free, but they're incorporated within the plan, when we can do, they're no cost to the employees and no cost to the retirees. And when we can do those kind of things and be proactive on health care costs, it's proven that it works.
This is important, and again, you know, the purpose of this show is really to focus on the importance of the March primary, which is a presidential primary in Michigan, but on the ballot is a renewal of the township millage. Why don't you tell us, viewers, a little bit about your duties as township supervisor?
As supervisor, I am in charge of the entire municipality, so police, water, fire, roads, general employees, they all ultimately answer to me. The only two that don't are the two other elected officials, the clerk and the treasurer. And my job is to oversee everything, make sure that money is spent appropriately, properly, and I'm also the focal point of the community. When I first became supervisor, I went into my secretary's office there, and there were 4 or 5 messages there, and I said, what are those? And they said, well, these people called you, but you don't need, I'll just give them off to somebody else. You don't need to handle that. And I said, I'm going to tell you, if somebody calls me, you give me the message, and you let me determine whether I should call them. And I give everybody my private cell phone number and give.
You're braver than I am.
Well, no, I want people to call me directly, and the reason for it is if you start here and you get a no, and you go to here and you get a no, and you go to here and you get a no, by the time that you get to me, you are so frustrated and so angry. I want you to call me here, and I can A, tell you whether we can do it, and B, more importantly, I know where to go to get it done. I know I can pick up the phone for you and say, Tom, take care of this here. Chief, take care of this here. Rather than you trying to figure it out, because as private citizens, it shouldn't be your job to figure it out. You have your own job, you know what to do, you're an expert in law, and so somebody calls you, you know exactly how to go through what needs to be done. Conversely, I want people to call me, so I take 20 phone calls a day from residents looking for something that they're either unhappy with or that they need done.
Before we sign off, give us 3 takeaways as we wrap up.
I'll go back to what was very important in 2011 when I first became supervisor, and aging in place. We are all getting older.
And more people, that's the goal, to age in place.
And we all have different options, whether it's a place down south, a place up north, or a place that they've lived here in the township for 40 years, 50 years, and nobody wants to move out of their homes. And I want to do whatever we can do from a township standpoint to keep you, myself, everyone in their home as long as possible. We do house checks by our police. We do house checks by our fire department. We have the senior center here that is one of our most popular departments over there, and they continually talk to people, and if there is somebody that has an issue, we try to help them. We have the small maintenance program out there where we can spend up to $10,000 to help people with new roofs, things like that. That's grant money from the government. So the biggest thing that we have here.
This is critical. Leo, we're out of time.
Oh, we can't be. Let's do another hour. Let's do another half an hour.
Yeah, okay, fine. We're out of time. Leo Savoie, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying. I want to thank you for watching this segment of Gracefully Graying.